Passage number 1 from Test 4, numbers 1 to 11. Number 1, Ghost Mural. In 1932, the well-known Mexican muralist David Alfaro Siqueiros was commissioned to paint a mural on the second-story exterior wall of a historic building in downtown Los Angeles. Siqueiros was asked to celebrate tropical America and his work. He accordingly titled it America Tropical. Okay, so what's going on here? Here we've got a comma splice. We've got two complete sentences. Here's one. Here's the second. Separated by just this comma, which is no good. So we can get rid of the original. C and D are going to make the same mistake. C, you're using the word accordingly to try to connect these two sentences, but that's not one of our fanboys, so we can't do that. D doesn't use anything. It just goes right into, again, another sentence. So the only one that works here is the one that adds this relative clause, which he accordingly titled. This which is referring back to the work, so it is appropriately modifying when it needs to modify, and everything is consistent, and we only need a comma here since we're separating an independent clause from this dependent clause, from this relative clause. So this one is going to be B. Number 2, he painted the mural's first two sections featuring images of a tropical rainforest and a Maya pyramid during the day. Also, to avoid scrutiny, Siqueiros painted the final section of the mural, the centerpiece, at night. So in this one, we have an opening word choice, and we have to decide which word to open it with. Now notice we have a contrast here. He did this painting during the day, but in order to avoid scrutiny, he painted this part of the mural at night. So we're looking for something more along the lines of contrast rather than something like also or moreover. Also or moreover, they don't show that contrast, that, well, he did this during the day, but he did this at night. And the one that shows contrast here and fits grammatically is B. However, the problem with although is you can't use although to start a sentence with a comma like you can these other words. Although is a subordinating conjunction, so you would have to start the sentence without the comma, and you would need a verb in this opening phrase as well, because you can't say, although to avoid scrutiny, Siqueiros painted the final section. That doesn't work. You would need a verb in this opening part of the sentence, something like, although he wanted to avoid scrutiny, or something like that. Even that wouldn't really make any sense. The only one that makes sense here is B, because it shows the contrast of he did this during the day, however, to avoid scrutiny, he did this other thing during the night. So let's move on to number 3. However, to avoid scrutiny, Siqueiros painted the final section of the mural, the centerpiece, at night. Notice we have this comma here. We are in a to or none situation because this is not a sentence, it's not a phrase that can be attached to the end of the sentence. So really what we would expect to have is another comma after centerpiece to make this a positive phrase, to make this a non-essential phrase. Right? You could delete this from the sentence and the sentence would sound just fine. So we're going to go with choice B. We definitely don't want a semicolon. We don't want to mix in the dash because we've already used a comma. And in the original, we don't want to use nothing because we need to have that closing comma. So this one is B. Number 4, the reason for Siqueiros' secrecy became clear when the mural was confided. The centerpiece of the work was dominated by images of native people being oppressed and including an eagle symbolizing the United States. So which choice best connects the sentence with the previous paragraph? This one looks pretty good. I mean, it is referencing his secrecy, right? How he did this final work at night. That connects it nicely to the paragraph, and then transitions us into the topic of this paragraph, which is about what was on that mural that was so that he needed to be secret about. So the original looks pretty good, but we'll always check all 4. All 3 sections of the mural were on display. That doesn't really connect into the previous paragraph as well as A does. The community turned out in large numbers. Again, maybe it's true, but it doesn't connect to anything in the previous paragraph. If the previous paragraph had mentioned something about the number of people going to the mural or something, then it might work, but not in this case. Siqueiros was informed of people's reactions. Again, doesn't go into the specific aspects of what's being discussed in the previous paragraph like the original does, focusing on that secrecy, which is how he ended that paragraph. So this one's going to be A. So number 5, the reason for Siqueiros' secrecy became clear when the mural was confided. So to confide means to tell someone something secret. that doesn't really work in context here. We're not telling someone about the mural, we're revealing it. So we need something more along the lines of revealed or shown to the public. And when we look at our choices here in this diction question, the one that works here is unveiled, right? You unveil a piece of art, you unveil a mural to the public. That works perfectly. Promulgated and imparted don't make sense in context, both in terms of meaning and just in terms of what the right word is, proper word choice, diction. The one that works here best in standard usage is choice D, so we'll take that one. Number 6, the centerpiece of the work was dominated by images of Native people being oppressed and including an eagle symbolizing the United States. Notice we have the subject of the sentence is the centerpiece of the work. And then we have the verb, was dominated by images of Native people being oppressed and including, well, including is not a verb. We need this to be, you can kind of think of it as parallel with the previous verb. This is also one of those fancy phrase compound predicates where we've got two verbs connected with this end. And remember, we don't need a comma or any punctuation here when we don't repeat the subject, right? We don't say and the work included. If we did, we would need a comma, but we don't have that in this case. So we just need included because that would be parallel in tense and in form with was dominated. So we like B. C is present tense, not good. Had included adds this unnecessary had. We just need included here. And the original doesn't work because it's not a verb at all. So this one is B. Number 7. We'll pick up where we left off over here. Siqueiros' political message did not please the wealthy citizens who had commissioned his work. They eventually ordered the mural to be literally whitewashed or painted over with white paint. However, by the 1970s, the white paint had begun to fade, and the bright colors of the mural were beginning to show through. At the same time, a social and civil rights movement for Mexican Americans was working to raise awareness of Mexican American cultural identity. Artists associated with this began to rediscover and promote the work of the Mexican muralists, particularly Siqueiros. So we look at this pronoun this. Remember, this is one of our problematic pronouns in our ambiguous pronouns video that we discussed. And we say, well, what is this referring to? I mean, I suppose with the movement, maybe? Or is it with the identity? Or is it with something else? It's just unclear. We want to make this a lot clearer, and typically we do that by adding a noun. Notice when you look at B and C, sure, they use different pronouns, it and them, but still we do have the same issue as we do in A. We just don't know exactly what it's referring to. But notice in D, it adds this noun, movement. So now we know exactly it's referring to the movement. And that's typically how you fix these ambiguous pronoun errors. You put in your own noun, it makes it clear. So 7 is D. Number 8, to them, America Tropical was an example of how art in public spaces could be used to celebrate Mexican American heritage while at the same time making a political statement. Inspired by Siqueiros and the other muralists, this new generation of artists strove to emulate the old mural masters. The result was an explosion of mural painting that spread throughout California and the southwestern United States in the 1970s. It was the Chicano mural movement. So which choice best combines the underlined sentences? So let's check these. A, the result was an explosion, the Chicano mural movement, of mural painting that spread throughout California, ... So here we're defining the explosion as the Chicano mural movement, but really we should define the explosion of mural painting as the Chicano mural movement, perhaps. Here, the appositive, the modifier is in the wrong place. It's describing the explosion, which doesn't really make sense. The result was the Chicano mural movement, an explosion of mural painting that spread throughout California and the southwestern United States in the 70s. Notice here, we're defining the movement as an explosion of mural painting. So here, unlike A, we have that relationship much more clear. So we like B. The explosion of mural painting that spread throughout California and the southwestern United States in the 1970s was the resulting Chicano mural movement. So we do at least have this direct connection here between what the Chicano mural movement was and that it was an explosion of mural painting. But I would say this is a little bit awkward because we want the focus of the sentence really to be on the Chicano mural movement, not the explosion of mural painting. We want really this to be in front because it's more specific. It leads us with a more active sentence rather than something like, compared to something like A, which focuses, or sorry, B, which focuses us on the Chicano mural movement rather than going into the definition of it. We want to give the term first and then give the definition. So C is all right, but I think we prefer B. D, an explosion of mural painting resulted, and it spread throughout California and the southwestern United States in the 1970s. It was the Chicano mural movement. Like, C and D are the same kind of thing, right? Both of them put the Chicano mural movement at the end. We want it to be in the beginning. Grammar-wise, D is fine. The semicolon is used properly here. But again, if you liked C, for example, you would have also liked D, because they're essentially the same. There's really no major difference between them. But we therefore can get rid of both because they both don't work. We want the one that puts the focus on the topic of the paragraph, which is this movement, and then followed by its definition. So we're going to go with choice B. Number 9. Hundreds of large, colorful new murals depicting elements of Mexican-American life and history appeared during this period, some in designated cultural locations, but many more in abandoned lots, on unused buildings, or painted on infrastructure such as highways and bridges. So notice here we have a list of where these things were. Right, so we have these murals were in designated cultural locations, but many more in abandoned lots, on unused buildings, or painted on infrastructure such as highways and bridges. So notice, in terms of the parallelism, we have in abandoned lots, on unused buildings, or painted on. Notice earlier we never said painted in abandoned lots or painted on unused buildings. It was assumed. You can assume that if we're talking about murals, they're painted on. That's what a mural is. So we don't need to repeat the painted, for one thing, because it's redundant, but second, because it doesn't fit the parallelism. All we need here is the preposition on to match up with the previous prepositions here. So we can get rid of A. Deleting it is not going to work because then we lose the preposition and then it makes no sense. It'll just say or infrastructure rather than or on infrastructure. B makes the parallelism even worse by adding the they. We don't need that. We know we're talking about the murals. So we're happy with choice C, which just focuses on the preposition, which makes our list of things here, our list of locations, parallel. So this one is C. Number 10, many of these murals can still be seen today, although some have not been well maintained. Fortunately, a new group of artists has discovered the murals, and efforts are underway to clean, restore, and repaint them. Once again, Siqueiros' America Tropical is leading the way. After a lengthy and complex restoration process, this powerful work is now a tourist attraction, complete with a visitor center and a rooftop viewing platform. So, which choice most effectively sets up the information that follows? Well, let's finish this then. Advocates hope that Siqueiros' mural will once more serve as an inspiration, this time inspiring viewers to save and restore an important cultural and artistic legacy. So which one of these choices best sets up the information that follows? So we're talking about America Tropical. We're saying that it was restored and that it is a tourist attraction and that it will hopefully serve as an inspiration. So saying that it leads the way is actually pretty good. It's giving us the idea that this mural will once again be the centerpiece of all of these murals, of this kind of art form, right? It will be the main thing people think about. It'll be a tourist attraction. It'll serve as an inspiration, etc., etc. So leading the way looks pretty good in terms of how it's setting up what's following. Once again, Siqueiros' America Tropical is being cleaned and restored. So yes, it is being cleaned and restored, but that's been established previously. Doesn't really introduce what follows, which is a discussion of its influence. So not good. Same problem with C. The America Tropical is at risk of destruction. Yeah, I guess that's true, but that doesn't set up what's following. Is awaiting its moment of appreciation? No, it already has achieved that appreciation, not only in the past, but also now, right? This powerful work is now a tourist attraction. It's not awaiting its moment of appreciation. It's already there. So best one here is going to be choice A. Number 11. At this point, we want to add this sentence. When it was painted in 1932, Siqueiros' mural was considered offensive, but now it is acclaimed. I mean, it seems to me, on the one hand, this would kind of fit because we're talking about, previously we read that this mural was something that was so offensive that it was painted over, and now it's like a tourist attraction. But on the other hand, that's kind of assumed and understood in what's going on here. Does this really add anything new or anything that needs to be emphasized? Not really. We know previously this thing was not really respected and it was censored, essentially. But now it has been restored, and it's an inspiration. It's a tourist attraction. So putting this, especially right in the middle of this discussion, doesn't seem like it's going to make any sense to put it there. Even though it's somewhat on topic, it's just ultimately redundant. It doesn't add anything that new that we need, that we didn't understand by what we've read so far. So we'll get rid of the yeses. Yes, because it provides historical context for the changes discussed in the passage. I mean, we already got that historical context. If, for example, we didn't have that opening discussion about the fact that this thing was originally offensive, maybe this would be useful, but we've had that, so we don't need that context. Yes, because it provides a useful reminder of how people once viewed Siqueiros' work. I mean, on the one hand, it does, but it's not very useful because we recall reading this previously. It doesn't add anything. No, because it unnecessarily repeats information from earlier in the passage. Exactly. No, because it makes a claim about Siqueiros' work that is not supported by the passage. No, it is very clearly supported by the passage. So the best choice here is C.